titled it, the project was not intended as a formal or publishable study, but more simply an exercise designed to learn how our library was being perceived by our research community and what we might be able to do to improve upon resource and service offerings. To start off, I'd like to give you some background on FAU's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, aka HBOI, and its library, and then move into the project itself. In case you're not already familiar with or haven't heard anything about Harbor Branch, I'll mention a few highlights. As you can read from the slide, the Institute's researchers have been engaged in scientific discovery and innovation for marine sciences and ocean engineering. When I was assigned to Harbor Branch, all these areas of research seemed somewhat abstract to me, especially since my academic background concentrated in the humanities and social science. I'll go through each of these and provide key words or phrases associated with these areas to bring things into sharper focus. Number one, marine science and engineering. This can refer to ocean floor exploration and also submersible vehicles. Number two, conservation of coral reefs. This can refer to dying corals and their ecosystem. Number three, studies of marine mammals and fisheries. This can refer to marine mammal rescues and diseases. Number four, marine drug discovery. This refers to chemicals from the sea to eradicate diseases such as cancer. Number five, estuarine and coastal ecology and observation. This can refer to studies on blue-green algae and also sea level rise. Number six, ocean dynamics and modeling. This can refer to weather prediction and also to sources of renewable energy. Number seven, aquaculture. This can extend to finding cost-efficient foods for fish farms. Number eight, marine science education. This refers to both public outreach and academic programming for future scientists. My examples only scratch the surface of work that takes place at Harbor Branch, but more can be found on their website. That's located at fau.edu/HBOI. I'd like to give you a brief description of the library at Harbor Branch. The library space itself is relatively small and holds just over 10,000 books and a legacy collection of 500 journal titles. Numerous technical reports have been digitized and have since been incorporated into FAU's electronic collections. Within the library is an e-classroom which doubles as a recording studio, and there are numerous PC and Mac workstations, but all of these have been rarely used. In recent years, library services and resources have been provided by the main FAU library at Boca Raton. Funding for librarian positions has been a little sketchy, at times funded by FAU and at other times by the Research Institute. Currently, there's no on-site librarian. Next, a few words about the research community. The community consists of experienced researchers, experienced faculty researchers, postdocs, graduate students, and semester by the sea undergraduate students. FAU runs programming at the site for its nurse practitioner students as well. And all this comes to about 200 people involved in finding solutions to some of humanity's larger problems, such as sustainable foods, disease mitigation, renewable energy, and various environmental issues. Researchers at Harbor Branch are funded through grants. Next, I'd like to move into the project itself. There were 4 broad questions we needed to ask of our community. Rather important to the process was my supervisor's approach, which was, We don't know what we don't know. In no particular order or priority, these 4 questions emerge somewhat intuitively. 1, how well do community members understand what resources and services the library and its personnel could provide? 2, what are some of the specific projects individuals or departments are working on? And what are some of the current trends in the field? 3, how do our researchers collect, manage, analyze, and visualize their data? And 4, what are their specific needs and wants related to their work? The next slide identifies the steps we developed as we moved into our investigation. First, we created a list of faculty, administrators, researchers, postdocs, and graduate students from all areas of the campus. Next, we brainstormed interview questions that would only take 20 minutes of conversation. Then we sent an email blast stating our intent to the local research community. And following this, we did a so-called beta test of our questions with friendly faculty and further tweaked our questions. Next, we set appointments with community members between August of 2019 and January 2020. And lastly, we wrote summary reports after each meeting. Just ahead, I have a few slides that tell more of what we wanted to know and items that we thought researchers would want from their library. With the research profile questions, we sought to learn what the research focus was for every participating individual or group, what the current trends are in their area of expertise, what technologies they used and how they collected and managed data, and if carrying an instructional load, how they used open educational resources, and whether they were placing textbooks on reserve. From our librarian frame of mind, we wanted to assess their familiarity with our somewhat standard library services and resource model. You recognize most of these, but there are some that are more specific to Harbor Branch, such as loaning of drones and grant writing assistance. At our location, we believe that we might be able to satisfy some professional development needs, and we're thinking about sessions or workshops on this array of possibilities. We were not experts at most of these, but the idea was to find people who were and to create programming for these topics. This next slide will show some of our findings. The items listed were the community's preferences, but taken from our own list of possibilities. We were able to interview about 25 researchers individually and were invited into 2 departmental meetings. These took place between August of 2019 and January 2020. During the interviews, the librarians had scripted questions naming possible instructional or workshop topics. The graph on this slide illustrates how participants' responses reflected interest relative to their work or their students' work. From highest to lowest, scoring items, they wanted training or instruction in, number 1, EndNote. This is the preferred citation management software among these scientists, but it's tricky to use due to the limited subscription. It came as a byproduct of web science. 2, conference presentation. This was most relevant to postdocs new to the profession. 3, student introduction to data management. 4, research impact and new approaches to metrics such as altmetrics and plumics. 5, website development. Some researchers wanted to publish their content for the general public, less formally than through peer-reviewed journals or institutional announcements. but of course they wanted extra staff to do this. 6, literature searching. This consumes a lot of time and some level database navigation. This was requested mainly by junior researchers. 7, grant writing. This is something they don't usually teach in graduate science programs, and yet everything depends upon grant funding. We later learned that the institution steps in only when a researcher has a grant proposal drafted. I'll have more to say about that ahead. Number 8, online teaching helps. Because this is relatively new, some instructional design and teaching strategy sessions would be beneficial. 9, software programs such as MATLAB and LaTeX were mentioned. I'll have more to say about these ahead also. 10, tech fee proposals. This would be instruction on how to write university grants for needed equipment or innovative technology workspaces, such as 3D printers or augmented reality and virtual reality labs. 11, library databases, and I think this one speaks for itself. 12, the advanced research process. This would be intended for our undergraduates, but we really didn't define what we meant by it. 13, IRB, Institutional Review Board. But this would be mainly applicable to students and faculty in the nurse practitioner program. An example might be the study of COVID precautions among migrant workers. 14, data visualization. This would entail a review of software tools to display research findings intended for reports and publication. And 15, predatory journals and where to publish. One example of this was when MDPI sent an email message to one of our senior researchers asking him to become a reviewer. He didn't know if he could trust that publisher, and so we offered a little bit of suggestion or experience from our end in that instance. On the next slide, we'll look at the top needs and wants of the community as reported to us. Right, here's the short list of wants and needs. Software licenses. Some individuals mentioned costly software programs that were specific to their work and not of relevance to areas other than their own. For instance, in marine engineering, one researcher wanted a program called LabVIEW, and another wanted SolidWorks. Next, software instruction. There were numerous postdocs who mentioned they might benefit from instruction on some programs that were already licensed or openly available. Python and R were such examples. Next, grant writing workshop. Junior researchers stated a need for grant writing, as mentioned above. This is not something that is ordinarily built into the curriculums at the doctoral level, according to what they told us. Next, conference presentation, using a camera, recording studio, or phone to live stream or to record talks or presentations is an acquired skill for many people. A so-called boot camp for this purpose was suggested in the interviews. One postdoc claimed that to be good at it, which had us thinking we could make use of internal talent for workshops and instruction. For the most part, the research community is largely self-reliant with respect to professional development. Next, dedicated computer hardware. One of the researchers expressed the need for a media server. The Institute seemed to have adequate support for computing equipment, but there were at least 2 who would make use of a dedicated media server if there were one available. Over the years, some of the scientists collected tens of thousands of images and recorded endless hours of video footage that could be made available or accessible with such a server. Next, support for best practices in science communication. Science communication in general, but with public education more specifically, a need was mentioned for improving both oral and written communication. Lastly, additional staff. Everybody wants more staff. The next slide describes what we wanted to do with our interview data. Basically, the next step was about organizing our findings, reflecting on what we found, and brainstorming what could come next. We populated a spreadsheet with our interview checklist of items that we thought we might offer the community and ranked them. We saw that previously. Separately, we documented new items that our community members wanted or needed and considered whether the library was able to resolve some of these or to provide support in some form or other. We wanted to be able to follow our progress and populated another spreadsheet indicating what was actionable, what action was being taken, and when. The last of the interviews was in January, and between that time and mid-March, we contacted vendors, faculty with needed expertise, and experts outside of FAU for the purpose of scheduling top quality workshop sessions to satisfy some of the most critical of our community's professional development needs. As a further illustration of our efforts, we met with a representative of FAU's Office of Research Development to find out exactly what they will offer and what stage researchers should approach them for assistance with grant writing. We learned that researchers had to have their proposals in hand, and that only then would the office offer recommendations to strengthen proposals before submitting to potential funders. This discovery made it clear that there was a need for earlier intervention and enable us to fine-tune any assistance we might be able to offer. So by mid-March, future programming was coming into focus, and then the other shoe dropped, and everyone was sent home to work. The next slide shows how we were able to acknowledge the needs and wants of our researchers, and in lieu of face-to-face professional development, provide Plan B, LibGuides containing introductory content. We created 9 categories into which we could address the most pressing needs and wants of the research community, and created LibGuides for bioinformatics, grant writing for specific scientific proposals, research data management, resume and CV best practices, scholars pick for statistics and analysis, science communication, software tools, tech fee at Harbor Branch, and video recording at Harbor Branch Library. Each of these guides currently runs from the FAU Library's website. One in particular turned out to be extremely popular. That one is called Software Tutorials for Open Source and Licensed Software Programs. This next slide shows what's inside. As you scan through the tabs naming software programs, you're likely to recognize some of them. Some of the better known ones are Adobe Photoshop, ArcGIS, SAS, maybe a few more. For those unfamiliar with every one within the assessment, I've sorted them according to how they might be used. And you look toward the bottom of the screenshot there. And they are data analysis and visualization, cloud storage, database construction, engineering and modeling, and nursing research. The last one, nursing research, came from content analysis. I pulled out software programs named in method sections of nursing dissertations completed over the last few years at FAU. The idea was to provide some help to our doctoral nursing students as they planned their dissertations. For each of the software guides, I use a simple, consistent pattern showing 1 or 2 books from our collection on the software program and links to introductory videos to acquaint new users with each program. The next slide illustrates this pattern. Looking left to right, you find 2 books from the collection with their illustrated covers and call numbers. In the center are 2 video links and one that introduces the software program and a second one that covers it in 2 hours. On the right is a placeholder. My picture used to be there. This placeholder that links to all the Harvard Branch LibGuides, 17 in all. Each of these guides retains this very simple design. My final slide asks, what does all this have to do with theological collections? I think the direct answer to that question is nothing. But the project seems to have some relevance to library practice, and a few benefits come to mind. First of all, our professors and researchers find that we are taking an interest in their work and likely their life's work. Next, we are better informed of the latest trends or the state of research within areas of our own responsibility vis-a-vis collection development. Further, it's an opportunity to update our community members on existing and new products and services that they might not have been aware of. The process of conducting a needs assessment is somewhat humbling in that we need to let go of preconceived community needs and update our perceptions of what's wanted or needed from the library or the larger institution. And the last of my own takeaways is that the experience has been an opportunity to explore how we might develop or innovate library services that are closely aligned to the institution's mission and to the stated needs and wants of community stakeholders. And I'll end with my tongue-in-cheek humor. This concludes my presentation. I welcome your comments or questions.